The Autopen hearings underway. What a scandal this is turning out to be. These senators are digging in. And the big concern here is that there may have been some kind of pay-to-play Autopen scheme going on. I'm going to get to the representative from Tennessee who believes that that may actually be the case. I mean, how the heck do you have 8,000 plus pardons all in one day unless, well, were those pardons for sale? That's the question that they want to ask. But more than that, they also want to get at why it is that nobody thought to invoke the 25th Amendment, given that Joe Biden was clearly, shall we say, beyond his capability at various times. I mean, you have only to think of the closet episode that Josh Hawley recently reminded us of, right? Josh Hawley saying the guy he was told by Secret Service would get lost in his closet. How do you have a president of the United States that doesn't even know his way around the closet?
Listen, I'll tell you something that I haven't said before because it came from a Secret Service whistleblower this past year. I talked to so many of them after the attempted assassinations of President Trump. But this Secret Service whistleblower actually was assigned to Biden, and he told me that Biden used to get lost in his closet in the mornings in the White House. I mean, the guy literally stumbling around in the White House residence couldn't find his way out of his own closet. The president of the United States. I mean, this is outrageous. We were lied to.
That's outrageous. Okay, so if that's true, we kind of need to know that. Do you not think? I mean, the fact that they were actually running them again, that tells you everything you need to know. I mean, I get it, right? You know, we talked about it here on the show at the time, 25th Amendment, you invoke it. I mean, careful what you wish for, because then Kamala Harris would have been the president of the United States. I think they knew that was just as bad as we knew it was just as bad, right? But anyway, the point is that they didn't actually do what they needed to do in a moment of crisis. And you really can't have a situation like that, because if somebody's not completely clued in, right, game on, astute and ready to govern the country, then who the heck is actually governing the country? And this is what they're trying to get at. One, who was in charge? Two, was there anything fraudulent going on in terms of these possible pay-to-play scandals? And three, why wouldn't you invoke the 25th Amendment? I mean, this same crowd, right, was all over Donald Trump saying, we need the 25th Amendment. He's crazy, this, that, and the other. And yet when they actually had a guy in there who allegedly didn't even know his way around the closet, they didn't do anything. So is it surprising to you that they didn't show up at the hearings? Not very surprising. This is their boycotting of the hearings, which Senator Cornyn says is effectively an admission of guilt. The Democrats are guilty because they won't even show up. Watch.
I will note that few of my Democratic colleagues are here today. Thank you to Senator Welch from Vermont for being here, leaving us with no other option than to take the boycotting of this hearing as an admission of guilt for their role in this crisis. We must not turn away from the search for answers.
Boom. All right? You can't turn away for the search for answers. You actually need these questions answered. This is really, really an important moment in time. One, because you got to ask yourself, if he was not equipped, why were they telling us otherwise? Why were they sitting there saying, best Biden ever? And I can go back to MSNBC. That was a pretty legendary quote, right? And all of them stood up for him and backed him until it was absolutely too darn late, because at the debates, it all got exposed. Of course, if you were paying attention, you would have seen it exposed much earlier. Would you not have? I mean, we played some of the clips here. I mean, I can go all the way back to Where's Jackie, right? Where's Jackie? Poor Jackie had passed away in a car accident months before, but apparently nobody told Biden.
And I want to thank all of you here for including bipartisan elected officials like Representative Governor, Senator Braun, Senator Booker, Representative Jackie. Are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here to help make this.
No, Jackie's not there. Poor Jackie. Jackie passed away. But then there was the moment at G7, and this is actually one of my favorite clips because it's when I really knew I liked Georgia Maloney. I mean, I always kind of liked her and her policies, but what a lady, right? What a class act. She saw Biden drifting away to the parachuter, and she went and got him. Take a look. Here he is. Okay, he's caught off guard. We're going to get my picture out of the way so you can see him. He sees something over on the side, and he starts wandering off. And Georgia, look at that. Out of the corner of her eye, she sees what's going on. She knows what the drill is, and she goes and gets him. It's like one of those senior moments, and we've all had experiences like that. You know, if you've lived a certain amount of time, you probably have had an experience like that. One of the things that was so notable in this particular clip is how long it took him to put his sunglasses on. In other words, he was slow. He was in bad shape. We all knew it. They knew it. They just didn't want to tell us. And so that's what these Autopen hearings are about. Just exactly what really was going on. Because for goodness sakes, if he's getting lost in the closet, he can't even figure his sort of way around G7. At one point, they had to take a picture without him. And yet, he stood up on stage and was a train wreck. I mean, I don't know who ever allowed him to do that. So why was Dr. Jill Biden out there singing his praises after that darn debate? Again, it was like Emperor has no clothes. They didn't want to admit the elephant in the room.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the... And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Why? Yes.
Wow. No, it kind of feels like you're the one that was doing what? Lying to us about Joe Biden the entire time, right? The word on the street is that Dr. Jill was running the show via her chief of staff, Anthony Burrell. So you had to go through Anthony because Jill was controlling Biden. So what exactly was going down in those last few months, I'm going to say last few years, I'm going to say the entire 4 darn years, because Where's Jackie was way earlier. I said from the beginning, they were running a guy from his basement. He had a teleprompter in front of him the entire time because apparently he couldn't think on his own. He never actually had to get out and campaign. And so they ran the guy from his basement, and then you got to ask yourself who was running things, because, you know, he didn't even know when he was supposed to stand or when he was supposed to sit. You know, the invisible chair thing. It turns out there was a chair there, right? So this is what they tried to say. Oh, it's a cheap fake. I don't care. There was a chair there. Fine. He doesn't know when to sit, when to stand, or what to do. Remember? Ooh, that was uncomfortable to watch. So there was a chair, okay? There was a chair. But we were all sitting there going, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And then, you know, the jokes started coming. But the jokes are coming because, unfortunately, he's asking for it. They're asking for it. They should have invoked the 25th. And now we have to worry about this. Okay, guys? Ladies and gentlemen, you got a new scandal that you got to actually really and truly worry about, because there's some 8,000 and change pardons that were put into place. And now there's the potential that all those pardons are going to get voided, because if it turns out that the guy didn't even know he was signing them, how can you have a president actually signing the pardons? Meanwhile, this is a bigger question that's being confronted right now in these hearings, and it comes from one Representative Tim Burchett out of Tennessee. I'm with my friend Benny recently, and he just laid it out on the line. He's worried that they were pulling a move, quite a move, and that these pardons were actually for sale. Let's listen.
Got staffers. I would look. Tennessee has had a history of this. We had a governor several governors ago. He's since passed away, but he sold pardons. You can look it up. His name was Ray Blanton. It made national news. And I mean, they wrote songs, Pardon Me, Ray. And it was a cash for clemency deal. And that's exactly what I think you're going to find out. You're going to find staffers that were able to take forms, get them, and run them through some sort of bogus legal system. And then they auto-penned them. And there's probably people out on the street that shouldn't be, but somebody got rich off that. And, wow. And I think those people, I hate to say it, but you'll see something probably horrible happen to some of those people, because it goes up the chain. This is a very dangerous town to play games in. I have no direct proof of that, but I'm just talking about history. And if, you know, you got somebody making $100,000 a year and somebody offers you $250,000 in some safety deposit box.
Whoa. Okay. So look, we need to be real about all of this. This is Washington, D.C. that we're talking about. And I think Burchett doesn't necessarily want to have to go in that direction, but these are questions that need to be asked. So a few things that we need to get to the bottom of. Number one, how many people knew that he was not in good shape. Number two, if you knew he was not in good shape, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you say something? Why was the 25th Amendment not enacted? That's why it is there, okay? That's why we have it on the books. Then you got to get at this question. If Joe Biden wasn't actually running the show, who was? Okay? Who was running the show? I have my suspicions that Dr. Jill Biden had a little bit more power than you thought, which is why she was so adamant that he run. And we all knew he couldn't run, for goodness sakes. It was like elder abuse to see him out there, and they kept forcing him to do this. What was that about? Okay, so you got to get to the bottom of that. Does it make, for example, all those pardons void? Remember, he told us he wasn't going to pardon his son? He sure did that. I think that may be the only one he actually physically signed. So big stuff, right? Because you can't have a situation where anything like this ever happens again. And I guess the most incredible revelation of all is that they were willing to do it again, all over again. They were willing to sit there and tell us we were wrong. We didn't know what we were looking at. I mean, I had to qualify everything saying, well, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. But you know what? I've lived long enough to sadly have seen this in people I love very much. And so we all know what we're looking at. And it turns out, sadly for Biden and his family, he actually has a very developed stage of prostate cancer. So in that particular situation, you got to ask yourself one of two things. One, why didn't he have a decent doctor? How can you have the president of the United States with a doctor who doesn't even perform the prostate exam? I get it. He's old. He doesn't need it. That's the thinking. But I'm sorry, he's the president of the United States. Okay? So we're going to take a little extra time and care, and we're going to dot our I's and cross our T's and make sure that all those exams that maybe you otherwise wouldn't need to get, you do get because you're the president of the United States. So that's number one. So you either have a lousy doctor and lousy medical care, or somebody knew and they covered it up. And we can't be in a situation where people are covering for the president of the United States. So that's a big deal. What did they know? Who knew it? When did they know it? Why did they cover it up? Who was running the show? And was any hanky-panky, for lack of a better word, going on in terms of money being exchanged for things that shouldn't have happened? Does this put all of the policy effectively in jeopardy? Is it all null and void? Are the pardons null and void? Because this guy didn't even know what he was signing. These are the questions that are going to come up. Of course, the Democrats hate it. They hate every bit of it. That's why they didn't even bother to show up. Chuck Schumer thinks that people don't care. The leading Democrat in the Senate thinks that you don't care. You don't care whether your president is healthy enough to be the president of the United States? I think we care, buddy boy.
What do you make of the Republicans holding this hearing on President Biden's cognitive abilities tomorrow and talking about the 25th?
This is the kind of coarseness that America doesn't like. And they're just unrelenting in diversionary actions. This has nothing to do with cutting Medicaid costs, cutting Medicaid help, helping clean energy, keeping hungry kids fed.
But it does have a lot to do, Senator Schumer, with making sure that nothing like that happens again. In other words, accountability in this situation actually matters tremendously. And believe me, if the tables were turned and Donald Trump were acting like that, you'd be all over it in 2 seconds. For goodness sakes, you were the ones always calling for the 25th Amendment when he was actually in power. So let's not kid ourselves. You were deliberately skipping that for a reason because you think that maybe people won't pay attention if you don't show up. Well, I'm telling you, we're paying attention right here on the Trish Regan Show, and we're not going to stop paying attention because that never should have happened. The 25th Amendment should have been invoked. And if you didn't invoke it, why didn't you? There's going to be a lot more that comes out of this. The hearings are going into tomorrow as well, and they'll be in the House, and you know that there's separate investigations, both from the DOJ as well as the GOP into this. We're going to find out, I promise you that, exactly what went down. And people need to be held accountable.